Have you ever felt like you're pouring every ounce of strength into your work, yet somehow falling further behind? Maybe you're the first one awake and the last one to rest, but your effort never seems to add up to anything. Maybe you watch someone with half your hours walk away with double your results. Or maybe you're exhausted, running on empty, while someone working less than you seems to have it all figured out. If you've ever wondered why hard work alone isn't enough, if you're tired of working yourself into the ground with nothing to show for it, then this story will change the way you work forever. Because once there were two fishermen who lived on the same shore, and one encounter taught one of them the difference between effort and strategy. Stay with me until the end. In a quiet fishing village where the sea had fed families for generations, there lived a 32-year-old fisherman named Mateo. Mateo had inherited his father's small wooden boat, and like his father, he believed in one thing above all else: hard work. Every morning, Mateo rowed out before the sun cracked the horizon. He cast his net by hand, hauled it in, and cast again, refusing to stop, refusing to rest. "My father did it this way," he would say. "Hard work is the only honest way." He fished from sunrise until the stars came out. His palms were raw from rope, his shoulders burned constantly. But he wore his exhaustion like a badge of honor. At night he would collapse onto his mat, too tired to eat properly, too tired to sit with his wife, Marina. She would watch him with worried eyes and say, "Mateo, you're wearing yourself down to nothing. There has to be a better way." But Mateo would shake his head. "Marina, the sea rewards effort. I just need to work harder." The other fishermen watched Mateo with a mix of admiration and pity. "That man fights the sea like it owes him something," they would say. If hard work alone filled a boat, Mateo would have the fullest boat in the village. But the truth was harder to admit. Despite casting his net twice as many times as anyone else, Mateo's catch was thin. Some days his net came up torn, fish slipping back into the water through the holes he never had time to mend. Every week was a struggle. Every sale at the market barely covered what his family needed. Down the shore lived a fisherman named Elias. Elias was the same age, had the same size boat, had even started with less money than Mateo. But he was different. Elias rowed out at sunrise and was back on the sand by early afternoon. Before he ever touched the water, he spent an hour each morning mending his net by lamplight and studying the tide and the pull of the current. And somehow, Elias came home with a fuller boat in half the hours. This fact gnawed at Mateo every single night. Then the village elders made an announcement that silenced the shore. The storm season was coming early this year, and once it arrived, no boat would touch the water for nearly 2 months. Whatever wasn't caught and salted by then would have to last through the storms. Mateo decided to work even harder, casting his net until his arms shook, refusing to stop and mend the growing tears along its edge. "Hard work never fails," he repeated to himself like a prayer. Meanwhile, Elias simply adjusted his hours around the tide charts, casting only when the fish were running close to shore, losing nothing to guesswork. On the 9th night of this brutal pace, the sea turned rough without warning. Mateo was hauling in what felt like his heaviest catch in weeks when the worn net gave way along an old tear and the entire haul slid back into the black water. He lunged for it, lost his footing, and went under. By the time another fisherman pulled him from the water, Mateo was barely breathing, his hands shredded, his body shaking from the cold. Marina sat beside him all night as the village healer pressed a hand to his chest and said, "Your body cannot survive this pace. You weren't pulled under by the sea tonight. You were pulled under by your own hands." Lying there, wrapped in blankets, Mateo felt something he had never let himself feel: defeat. Not from the sea, not from the storm season closing in, but from the quiet, terrifying thought that everything he believed about hard work might be wrong. "I did everything right," he whispered to Marina. I worked harder than anyone on this shore. Why am I still failing? Marina held his torn hands gently and said, Maybe, my love, hard work was never the missing piece. Maybe there's something you haven't learned yet. 3 days later, once Mateo could stand, he walked down the shore and knocked on Elias's door. Elias opened it. Mateo, I heard what happened. Come, sit. They sat on the sand looking out at Elias's boat, nets coiled neatly, not a single tear in sight. Elias, Mateo said, his pride finally quiet. I fish twice your hours. I give the sea everything I have. But you work half the time and bring home twice the catch. How? Elias didn't answer right away. He walked to his boat and lifted 2 nets, laying them side by side. One was tangled, knotted, torn in 3 places. The other was clean, every knot tight, every line straight. Try pulling a catch through this one, he said, holding out the torn net. Mateo dragged a basket of stones through the holes, watching half of them fall straight through. Now this one, Elias said, holding out the mended net. Mateo dragged the same basket through, and not a single stone slipped free. This is the whole difference, my friend, Elias said. You've been fishing with a torn net for years, wondering why your hands bleed and your boat stays empty. Elias walked Mateo through 3 things. First, mend before you fish. I don't cast blind and hope. I mend my net before sunrise so nothing I catch slips away, and I read the tide so I'm only casting when the fish are actually there. You spend 6 hours casting into empty water. My net works with the sea instead of fighting it. Second, fish fewer waters, not more. I know 2 channels better than any man alive. You chase every current, every rumor of a better spot, and you master none of them. I go deep where you go wide. Third, rest is part of the catch. My mind is clear because I sleep enough to read the water properly. I see the signs of a school forming before anyone else does. You're so tired you can't see what's right in front of you. Elias placed a hand on Mateo's shoulder. You're not failing because you don't work hard enough. You're failing because hard work is the only tool you've ever picked up. Effort without strategy is just suffering with a brave face on it. It's time to mend your net. Mateo went home that night with a heart full of something new. Hope. The next morning, for the first time in years, he didn't rush straight to the water. He sat with Marina and a length of cord and spent the first hour of daylight mending every tear in his net. He learned to read the tide marks on the rocks. Within a week, his casting hours had dropped from 14 a day to 7. He stopped chasing every patch of open water and returned to the 2 channels that had always been kind to his father. He slept through the night for the first time in years and woke sharp enough to spot a school of fish before he'd even rowed out. The change in his life went far beyond the water. He ate dinner with Marina again. He sat with her in the evenings instead of falling asleep mid-sentence. His friends noticed it first. Mateo, you're out on the water half as long, but you look stronger. He would smile and say, I'm not working harder anymore. I'm working with the sea instead of against it. By the time the first storm clouds rolled in 2 months later, Mateo's stores of salted fish were the fullest they had ever been, caught in half the hours his old routine had demanded. Elias came by one evening, looked over Mateo's full racks of drying fish, and nodded. So here's your challenge this week. Look at the one thing you keep doing harder instead of smarter. Ask yourself, is there a tear I've been ignoring? A pattern I haven't bothered to learn? Then take one morning, just one, to mend what's broken instead of pushing through it one more time. Because you were never meant to fish with a torn net for the rest of your life. It's time to mend it. If this story hits something in you, like this video and send it to someone who's been working themselves into the ground. Drop a comment and tell me, What's the one thing you're going to mend this week? Your best catch comes from a clear mind, not a broken net.